The Manamula Noxhydria, colloquially known to those of the Middle Heavens by its nickname, the Facehugger, is just one of the deadly stages of the Xenomorph XX121's life cycle. This stage of the Xenomorph life cycle, though, is particularly deadly. You could have an up-and-close encounter with almost all the other life stages of the XX121 and have at least a decent chance of making it out alive, given the right circumstances. However, the Facehugger is a different story. Almost everyone that has been unlucky enough to face down one of these terrifying creatures has succumbed to the same fate. Attachment, sedation, implantation. Almost all encounters end with the Facehugger successfully subduing its victim, leading to an XX121 chestburster implantation. So if you are unlucky enough to be subdued by a Facehugger, are there any options for the creature's removal before it has time to begin the impregnation process? Today's Dialogue will be exploring the possibilities that might exist for the Manamula Noxhydria removal. Removal of the Facehugger has been attempted a number of times across the Middle Heavens over the decades. Looking at these occasions might clue us into a way to remove the Facehugger before it can secure your imminent demise. Our first case to examine is that of Executive Officer of the US CSS Nostromo, Gilbert Kane, in the year 2122. Kane was attacked by and subsequently subdued by a Facehugger on the moon of LV-426, while exploring a derelict engineer vessel and coming into contact with a massive number of overmorph stage XX121 xenomorphs. After his crew returned him to the Nostromo, breaking quarantine procedures, Science Officer Ash was quick to scan Kane and his parasite to determine if removal was even possible. Ash was able to identify that the creature has put Kane into some kind of coma, with the Facehugger itself acting to keep Kane alive. This process that we know little about seems to suggest that the Facehugger creates a situation between itself and its host, where the host cannot survive without the assistance of the Facehugger while in this comatose state. How the creature does this is unknown. It's likely that the side effects are brought on by a potent chemical sedative that not only incapacitates the host, but makes things like respiration and possibly circulation reliant on the Facehugger's assistance. This prospect means that any forceful removal of the creature would likely kill the host. Captain Arthur Dallas, though, wishes to proceed with the attempts to remove it, accepting full responsibility for anything that might happen to Kane during the process. Their first attempt is to simply try and pull the creature from its grasp around Kane's face, the logical first step. The creature's response, though, is to tighten its tail's grip around his throat and begin to sink its nails at the end of its digits into his head in order to lock the creature in place. As Dallas states, it's not coming off without tearing his face off with it. Their second try sees them attempt to remove the creature by cutting off its digits. However, this attempt ends just as disastrously, if not more. When the creature's flesh is sliced into, it exposes its pressurized bloodstream, causing a highly acidic acid blood to spew forth and proceed to eat through 2 whole decks of the Nostromo before coming to a halt. All this destruction was caused by only a little spill of its blood, meaning that trying to cut the creature off entirely would likely result in the host, the people conducting the operation, and their surroundings being subjected to a whole Facehugger worth of the acid. This is a wonderful defense mechanism, meaning that you wouldn't dare kill it. Ultimately, the crew of the Nostromo fail to remove the creature before it can implant Kane. And rightly so. They were ill-equipped to deal with a creature of this nature, being that this crew is essentially space truckers. The second case we must look at is that of John J. Marichuk. Marichuk was a colonist of the moon LV-426 and the Hadley's Hope colony there that was founded in the year 2157. By the year 2179, the colonists of the moon had been tipped off by Carter Burke to the location of the very same derelict craft that Kane and his crew had encountered around 50 years prior. After such, the colony would succumb to an XX121 outbreak, during which a colonist by the name of John J. Marichuk would be attacked by a facehugger in the sub-levels of the colony's atmospheric processor. Marichuk was taken back to Hadley's Hope, where the colony's surgeon, Dr. Biggs, attempted to remove the creature before it could implant another one of the colonists with the xenomorph creature that had been overwhelming them. The doctor made a sizable incision across the creature's back while it was attached to the host of Marichuk. Not aware of the dangers of this course of action, Dr. Biggs would suffer a direct and horrific splash of the creature's acidic blood right across his face and his throat, leading to his painful death. And while this wasn't enough to kill the creature, it did seem to weaken it enough for the two med techs in the room to pry it from Marichuk's face and place it within a specimen jar, likely in a highly basic solution in order to prevent it escaping using its powerful blood. Unfortunately for Marichuk, he did not survive the procedure. Later, it was revealed through his autopsy using a CT scan, MRI, and blood panels that the creature had been directly responsible for his death. In this case, the creature wasn't strong enough to tear his face off or crush his windpipe. Instead, during its removal, the facehugger discharged a toxic chemical into his body, causing an overdose of sorts and initiating a myocardial infarction, otherwise known as a heart attack. This shows us that even if you can remove the creature without it using its strength to kill you, it has a number of chemical agents at its disposal in order to do so. It's possible that this is the same chemical that it uses to sedate the host. If used in a high enough quantity, can actually cause heart failure. But nevertheless, whatever chemical it is and whether it uses multiple, the facehugger was still able to survive the procedure, going on to rapidly heal itself, replacing its cells with polarized silicon. And with that facehugger yet to have made a successful implantation, it would later be used in a failed attempt by Carter Burke to impregnate Ripley with an XX-121 chest burster. All of this just goes to show how dangerous and resilient these creatures really are. The third of our 4 cases that we have to explore today deals with the events surrounding Sergeant Dan Lope of the USCSS Covenant in the year 2104 on Planet 4. After a series of unfortunate events for the crew of the Covenant, they found themselves in the middle of a freak science experiment being conducted by the rogue synthetic David 8. Sergeant Lope, along with Private Cole, were attempting to rescue their crewmates from the doings of David, when they were both attacked by a facehugger. While Cole was able to avoid being grabbed, Lope was not as agile, and the facehugger was able to subdue him within a few moments. Thinking quickly and not knowing the consequences, Private Cole opted to cut the creature from Lope using a tactical knife. He made a large gash in the creature, spewing a large amount of its blood out, causing it to burn away a great deal of the left side of Lope's facial tissue. So here we have it, a successful removal. They were able to pull the creature off as it slowly died and curled up. Well, not quite. Even if you call this incident, or an incident like this, successful, the facehugger was quick to act. After failing to attack Cole, it's likely that it became highly stressed and agitated, meaning it knew that it was in great danger of being killed by Cole or Lope, and so accelerated the process of impregnation. When the creature is removed from Lope, we see that it dies shortly after. The wound it inflicted doesn't seem to suggest that it died from the wound. This is more akin to what happens to a facehugger after successful implantation. And another point of evidence that goes to support this is that the proboscis used to implant its cocktail of mutagen compounds at the time of its death was extended, meaning that it had already moved down Lope's esophagus and implanted something. All of this meaning that the creature did in fact complete its task. And for the brief time it was attached to Lope, it rapidly injected him with the Plagiaris praepotens in order to secure an implantation before its demise. And while Lope's chestburster would take much longer to develop, it would still come to pass and lead to another alien creature. It's also important to point out that it's hard to use this as an example when lined up against the others, as this was not a Xenomorph XX-121's facehugger. Instead, it was a Praedomorph's facehugger, meaning that its behaviour physiology, strength, etc., are all different from that of the facehugger XX121, but it was at least similar enough to include in this study. Reaching our final case, we again are going to talk about a bit of a variation on the traditional formula. In the year 2381, aboard the USM Auriga, an outbreak of the clone variants of the Xenomorph XX121 occurred. During this time, the cloned Ellen Ripley, in the form of Ripley 8, was once again fighting to survive a Xenomorph onslaught. While being chased through the hive, Ripley 8 was attacked by a facehugger. However, Ripley was able to pull the creature from herself. Now, remember that she does have enhanced strength due to her DNA being spliced with that of a Xenomorph XX121. Even with that said, I don't believe that she was simply able to rip it off, because the creature did have a firm grip with both its digits and its tails already around her. No, this facehugger almost seemed to give up, all on its own, releasing Ripley after only a few moments. And I think that is simply because the facehugger somehow detected that Ripley 8 was one of its kind, or had Xenomorph DNA. Maybe it detected the DNA and assumed that she had already been implanted. Possibly it did try and implant her or sedate her, but the sedative didn't work, as she was immune to it. It's quite hard to nail down exactly what has happened between these two in this moment. The fact that they were in water might have even had some kind of effect on its ability to sedate her. But I tend to believe that whatever it is that stops a facehugger from attacking its own kind is what happened between Ripley 8 and this facehugger. But obviously, this sort of situation does not apply to basically anyone. I just thought it would be an interesting thing to include in this data log. Realistically, there appears to be little to no way known to safely remove a facehugger and avoid it implanting the host with Plagiaris praepotens. In terms of what the project has to offer in terms of advice is limited. It's possible that some kind of apparatus could be used to gently slide under the digits and the tail of the creature in order to stop the creature harming the host during attempted forceful removal. However, even a slight mistake or sudden movement taken while applying such a device would likely trigger its response. And if this was the case and you started to be able to remove it physically, the facehugger would probably either opt to speed up the implantation or make an attempt to kill the host with its chemical compounds. Any attempt would seem to be, in the end, too little, too late, with the host either being killed or already successfully impregnated. The main advice we can give to those across the Middle Heavens is to avoid these creatures at all costs if possible. You're unlikely to survive if you find yourself in their midst. So let's say you are implanted. With facehugger removal being nearly impossible, your best bet instead is to wait until the implantation is complete and instead focus your efforts on removing the chest burster, which has been shown in history to be a much more realistic, if not still improbable goal. Project Acheron has a couple of data logs surrounding these topics if you all want to analyse them, just in case you or your loved ones find yourself in an unfortunate tussle with the likes of this horrid species known as Xenomorph XX121.
Before you go, I wanted to let you know about the Acheron Colonial Marketplace, the one-stop shop for all Project Acheron merchandise. All proceeds go to fund our future endeavours under the project, so if you want to support the channel and look good doing it, pick up some Acheron merch. But what other data logs would you like to see? If you have any ideas or have any questions to be answered, please leave them in the comments or contact me directly through the Project Acheron Discord. If you enjoyed today's segment, please leave a like and share the video. And if you really want to support what we do here and gain access to a bunch of awesome rewards, consider becoming a Project Acheron channel member, like Project Director Chris Dassinger and team member Raunchy. I hope to see you all here again very soon, but until then, this is the Acheron Project signing off.